After a first episode that introduced a lot of stuff that I didn't like and a lot more stuff that I really did, Ms Marvel's second episode has now fallen nicely into our hands. But does it improve itself in its second episode, or does it let its mediocre moments take over the entire thing? Well... Hey everyone, I'm RV Rocks, and Ms Marvel Episode 2 is upon us. And it introduces us to some more key players in the series, but also doubles down on a lot of the things that I didn't like about the first. The episode starts off with Kamala enjoying the high of her life. After becoming a superhero, she is feeling the best she has ever felt, and it's reflected in a very Bully Maguire-esque sequence of her finally feeling like a cool person. Of course, contrasted heavily to how terrible she handled this exact same situation in episode prior. In this process, she also finds out her high school bully, Zoe, is an influencer of sorts, and got very famous for live streaming her altercation with Kamala in episode 1. With Kamala's superhero name being dubbed the Nightlight. This brings me to my first issue with the episode. The way they deviate from the comics is really starting to bug me. It feels like every time this show starts to win me over, they bring in some MCU original stupid thing, like the Nightlight name, that throws me off beginning to really love this show. And using Nightlight as my example of this may throw you off, given that it's a very small thing in the grand scheme of things, but it's the first in a long list of MCU original changes that really throw me off. In fact, for the remainder of this video, I will throw a stupid MCU changes counter in the corner of the screen to prove it. The episode continues with Bruno training Kamala in the ways of a superhero, in a sequence of scenes that feels eerily similar to that of the training scenes in Shazam. And this brings me to stupid MCU thing number 2. Kamala's powers are different, and I've harped on this before, but this episode really reinforced how little they have done to justify this change in powers. As of right now, the only things she has used hard light to construct are big hands, which mind you was her last power set, and magical floating flights of stairs. They change her powers from being something perfect for her character to making her Kamala Khan, the Stair Master. After this, we get a pretty abrupt transition, in complete fairness, into another subplot for the season, and that is Nakia trying to get onto the mosque board. And this is perfectly fine to me, but Nakia, she's stupid MCU thing number 3. Nakia in the show is very different than Nakia in the comics, and I don't necessarily mind the direction they have taken with her, unlike other changes, but she almost feels like she should be an original character with the actual Nakia running around somewhere. Almost. I don't know, I actually really like her. Kamala goes to a party, falls in love with her cousin, gets into some antics, Bruno stays the worst. The mystical artifact is heavily implied to be tied in with her great-grandmother who went mysteriously missing. Great, count that as a stupid MCU thing. And then we fall into the best part of the episode, and that is this big festival for all of those at Kamala's mosque. And this is where the show really sinks its hooks into me. I love this world they've created, I love these characters, I like seeing them interact and just existing in that space. And then they start doing superhero stuff and they lose me. Much like the Ms Marvel comics, the show is at its best when focusing on its fantastic characters being real people. However, unlike the comics, they fail to capture the superhero stuff in a very engaging way, which will probably put off a lot of the core audience of the MCU. Maybe this is a conspiracy on my part, but it feels like Disney is setting up this character for failure, but that's aside the point. I'm not Pakistani, obviously, but I am Mexican, so I know all too well that feeling of going to a big extended family gathering and watching everyone break off into their own little subgroups and having to navigate that hellscape. Anyone with a large family probably understands this feeling, and it makes this scene all too accurate. Kamala going to the gossiping aunties, Bruno basically being forced to go talk to the only other white people, it's just all too perfect. But then it just transitions into another lame superhero scene where once again, the plot just rockets forward to do like 10 different things in the last 5 minutes. Also, this is definitely a nitpick, but why did Kamala have the Captain Marvel cosplay basically already ready for this scene? I mean, why not stick closer to the source material and have her wear something like this? I mean, she was already basically rocking this outfit in that scene anyways. Either way, that brings me to stupid MCU thing number 5. They have been allergic to making Kamala wear anything she does in the comics. In the first Ms Marvel run, she has several iconic outfits in the first 5 issues alone, but not one of them is in the show yet. I mean, come on, even the Avengers game is beating you in this regard. Give her the lightning bolt, you cowards! If nothing else, give her the lightning bolt t-shirt and a scarf. It's right there, it's easy. And that's kind of emblematic of where this show is falling apart for me in its current state. It doesn't feel enough like Ms Marvel. I enjoy seeing comic stuff in live action. Moments like Kamala stirring up trouble at her mosque, or her powers malfunctioning at school, or being given a drink that secretly has alcohol in it were fun to see jump off the comic page, but it's all just surface level references. These scenes were handled so laughably differently that they kinda lacked all staying power for fans. It's one of those things where it's fun to see these scenes happen in live action, but they don't understand the story context of them, so they might as well just not have included them. Stupid MCU thing number 6. Stop referencing scenes. Either do the scenes right in their entirety or don't bother. Speaking of things that are more so just references than adaptations, Zoe. I don't know if I have the power to comment on the plotline with damage control yet, given that it's just barely started, but I will say Zoe continues to irritate me. Stupid MCU thing number 7, Zoe deserves to be a bad character. In the comics, Zoe has a lot of toxic traits at the start of the series that she works through to become a better character. The biggest one being that she was, well, racist. However, in the MCU, they are clearly throwing her racist tendencies onto this unnamed lady in the Department of Damage Control. But making the evil character be racist is obvious! Comic Zoe worked because while she was racist and overall just the worst, her interactions with Kamala and specifically Nakia proved that she was ultimately still a good person, and her redemption had impact because of that. This feels like a change that will only satisfy that crowd that gets angry anytime a character does an unlikable action. Specifically characters who are meant to be bad or have flaws, they will do a bad thing that the story treats as a bad thing, and people will go up in arms. We all know the type I'm talking about. But having Zoe not really have any character flaws or toxic traits to work through, and instead rather have her be a generic bully caricature that will more than likely end up being redeemed and part of Kamala's core group at the end of the show, feels distinctly more Disney. And because of that, I am starting to understand the argument that this feels like a Disney Channel show. But this show isn't a Disney Channel show because it stars a girl who likes boys and goes to high school and has fun fantasies. It feels like a Disney Channel version of the Kamala Khan story. Picture like a inverse Riverdale type situation. Of all the characters to change the source material of, I think they chose the worst possible option. Because yes, Ms Marvel takes place in a high school. It's silly. It's about a teenage girl with hormones and drama and boys. But it's also one of the more serious stories in the Marvel lexicon. It handles these moments of teenage drama and not fitting in a way that really shapes the characters in its world. And Ms Marvel the MCU show decidedly doesn't do that. At least not yet. And not yet is the phrase that I will stick on to end this video. I like the show. I don't know if I liked it as much as last week, but I still don't love it. And that is where I will stay until episode 3. And if you want to watch me talk about episode 3, then why don't you subscribe to RV Rocks, ring the bell, like this video, and comment all your thoughts on Ms Marvel's second episode. This show is taking its toll on me, I'll be honest. But I'm trucking through full of optimism and, of course, dreams of clout, so please continue the conversation either in the comments or on Twitter at RV Rocks. But before you do any of that, I have been RV Rocks, and thank you so much for watching. See ya!